Welcome back everyone for our question and answer session with Adam. Thank you, Adam, for another great presentation. We just want to say thank you to all the people who are interacting with us all around the world. We have had people messaging us, and it's past 1 a.m. now in Australia, but they're staying up late watching. We've seen photos from dogs in the UK, the US, Canada.
And one cat.
And one cat that keeps typing.
Thank you.
And also someone in India as well. So it's fantastic to know that there's so many people enjoying the presentations from all around the world. And we really appreciate your participation through Twitter. We're keeping an eye on Facebook and Instagram as well. Now, Adam, one of the things you've touched on that we would like to sort of draw out a little bit more is kind of this acknowledging that if we see more variation in the behaviour within or between individuals within one breed than we see within a breed, are breeds just an illusion that we have created in some regard? Like, are they just a human fancy?
Well, I don't think, unfortunately, the situation is more complicated. It depends also what you are looking at. So the breeds were selected for some specific jobs. So, and they really had to be good at that. So a sheepdog should be good with sheep. I mean, there's no question. Now, the other issue is that nowadays it's not really a typical situation that the sheepdog is actually getting into any contact with sheep. So the other part of the behavior, so when it's about interacting with humans, there probably it's really true that the individual variation within a breed, the within breed variation is at least as big or comparable to the between breed variation. But it's depends what behavior you are talking about. So if you are talking about this interactive behavior, then this might be, if you talk about a specific breed behavior that the breed was selected for, they might be the same thing that, yeah, there are breed differences. And this can actually have also an effect on the behavior development, what I try to show, which are still around with us. So if a breed has been selected for visual interaction, those are probably more relying on visual communication with the humans as well.
And I guess to draw on that, when we're talking about these interbreed differences, so you're talking about a breed-specific behaviour, do we know enough yet to say whether there's those differences are based on genetic variation?
I think they should be. That's the idea behind the breed. So when you are selecting, that means that if you see, let's say, a border collie to be able to herd a flock of sheep, and if you take even a border collie that for many generations had no experience, that you can see that in most cases he would interact in a more typical way with a sheep rather than, let's say, a pug or a poodle. So I think those are very likely to be genetic effects, what we see there.
And for a border collie that did not behave border collie-like, what would we expect to see?
Well, I mean, if they would not recognize what he should do with a sheep,
yeah,
that would
sheep, nothing.
That's no, yes, not interesting. But I know many of these stories that people who have a border collie from a breeding line that has no interaction with sheep, that they accidentally saw these animals, and they, I may say not immediately, but very shortly, get this idea what to do. Obviously, then the sheep will interact, and then they will get into this pattern. But it probably never happens with a sort of breed from a dog that was not selected for that. Let's say a windhound or whatever. Yes, other breeds.
So, when we're thinking about these differences, one of the areas you brought up was the brachycephalic and the dolichocephalic. Would it be also interesting to look at these anatomical similarities? And talk about similarities between dogs based on anatomical traits?
You mean within a
so looking at, so for example, brachycephalic dogs as a group,
short-faced dogs,
short-faced versus the long-faced dogs as a group.
Well, I mean, that's what we did. So basically, the idea is, and we know also that if you are selecting for different, let's say, put it this way, head shape, there are other things are going on even within the head. So the brain of those dogs also look quite different because of these anatomical changes. So yes, I mean, this is a specific trait that has a general effect on those breeds who have been lucky or unlucky to have that head.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Some have an unlucky head.
But I guess if we see differences in anatomical structures, do we also then see, I guess, similarities where dogs may look different but have been selected for a similar purpose or activity in relation to humans?
Well,
Or do they tend to group?
Well, I mean, it's different because if you have, so for a specific function, a function is also a lap dog is a function. So basically the dog that you can comfortably have in your lap, you need a certain weight for that and the size. So, and basically this is one of the situations where for many different previously selected lines, so sheepdogs and other types of dogs, you have the small variant because that's what the dog has. So there's a convergence in size from different aspects. But the morphology is the same because, you know, this is a very important part of the whole interaction. So for a hunting dog, whether it's hunting for a certain size of a prey, then you need a certain strength. So you end up in a certain size again. So it's different to have dogs that are looking differently and have the same job.
Yeah. No one has let my dog know that he's too big to be a lap dog.
Yeah.
He will take up the entire 3-seat couch and my lap. We've had, I guess, some interest also in the study design component of research. So I guess some questions about when you're performing, I guess when you're trying to answer a question that relates to these kind of topics, how do you go about working out the number of dogs that you want to look at, the numbers of each breed within that, the similarity of the rearing environment? Can you control that, or do you just kind of have to go with what's available? Are the dogs all sourced from a similar kind of breeder? Those kind of questions relating to, I guess, the consistency within your subjects. So could you talk a little bit about the study design process and how we can control?
Yes, so the main interest of our group is the family dog. So family dog can be any dog. It could be a mixed breed, a mongrel, a specific breed, obviously. And so we don't care too much. I think it's more like the representativeness of the sample. So what we have, obviously we're working in Budapest. It is a capital, not a huge capital, but a large capital. So it determines what sort of dogs you have. And also, basically, we make it through the internet. We have Facebook advertisement. Obviously, there's a large network of dog owners that are already related to us in some ways. So when we are doing a new experiment, we have this announcement. Would you like to come with your dog around? And then, but we make sure that we have a relatively balanced sample. So we have, if it's possible, huskies, windhounds, sheepdogs, mixed, and so on. So all kinds of dogs. However, obviously, also know that, and we get this often as a critic that, yes, I mean, you have shown that dogs are reacting to the pointing gesture, but what does it tell us about the stray dogs in India? And I say nothing, obviously, because
there are limits.
There are limits to what you can generalize. So obviously, it can something. So I could say to them that, well, if you take the puppy from that stray dog, and maybe in 1 or 2 generations, you can make a real family dog out of it, and then it's again, our answers are interested for or informing that situation. But at the moment, no. And even then, but you have to consider that not all owners, I mean, we have specific owners to come to us. So those owners who are interested in their dogs, who are interested in how they perform, they are challenged, but they like science, they like to interact with scientists. Sometimes we try to go sort of decide and go and visit somebody, and we sort of force ourselves on that dog and the family. But it turns out it's not working. I mean, many of dogs, and that's really sad on the other side, and should be mentioned, that many dogs who are not really exercised or don't get the necessary input, they are just not having good welfare. And you can see them, they come to the department, and not to mention how they look and what, you can immediately see that there's a problem there. You point twice on one side, and the dog is exhausted after this experience because there's mentally just
so
too much for them,
to deal with.
Which is totally unnatural, I think, and that's what also people should know, that the dog needs to be just as them, needs to be experiencing things in their life. It's not enough to have a carpet on the
and I think it's important to I guess reiterate that even though there may be challenges in getting the perfect controlled consistency amongst subjects when we do applied research like this, it's still answering questions. We still get demonstration of proof of concept, which is how, I guess, with science, it's not just we're going to answer the question and we're done. It's always like another little piece of the puzzle gets slotted in. And everyone's research all around the world that we see from the people that are presenting over the next few days are putting in their little pieces of the puzzles that increase our understanding of dogs and how they relate to us. And over time, it self-corrects through the scientific process. We get repetition. We see the same results coming up somewhere else, or something gets disproven. And over time, we evolve that understanding and, I guess, move forward with what we know.
So as you have a number of different topics that you're working on at the moment, so what are you most excited about at the moment?
Well, most excited, I must say, I'm about cats at the moment, but we
Okay.
should not talk about this now.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, just one. Yeah, but about dogs, I mean, we have several projects. I think I'm most involved in that, the social learning one. So that really was, this is also where I again feel that our research adds something to the general knowledge, because everybody knew, I mean, you can't tell a shepherd anything new about, you know, how he should teach his dog to herd, or how the dog can learn from other dogs how to do this job. But in general, the public is not really aware that dogs are learning by observation, what they learn, what they not learn. And so I really like to that project where we introduce this learning by imitation, and also, even from a scientific purpose, it was really fantastic, because we can use this method now to investigate the memory of dogs, about actions, and there are many interesting things that you can research.
So if someone at home hasn't seen this, I suggest you have a look for Do As I Do, Learning in Dogs. We'll put a link up on Twitter when we get away from this session so that you can see. But basically, you went through the process of teaching a dog to copy what the human did. And they understood this to the point that if the handler jumped, the dog would then jump.
Yes, I think it's even more important to put it in a way that we taught the dog something that they have forgotten to do. Because I think dogs are very good in learning from humans when they are puppies, but we actually don't like it. I mean, you don't like that if you start reading a book, you know, and the dog sees that you interacted with the book, that he would also interact with the book in a same way. So you always say, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do that, don't do that. So pup dogs are clever animals, as you know, and they just learn that, okay, I don't do anything. Now, what we teach them is actually now, okay, now this is the time when you can do what I'm doing. And I think this is an interesting thing for dogs, and also I think for the people, because they can more get into the dog's perspective, and then, okay, how complicated it is to jump over something, because you have to show it.
Or go and stand in the box and do a 360 and come back.
So I think it's a good way, and also dogs enjoy it, and they basically then can learn from human behavior a lot.
So I imagine that when you entered this field, you didn't expect you would be doing this Do As I Do.
No. When I was expecting for do 2-3 research dog, and then it's over.
Okay. So looking back to that time, all of this experience that you've had, what has been challenged about what you thought about dogs? Because you used to be an average person in your
with an interest in
with an
fish.
interest
I can still be an average person.
You're still an average person. Okay, fine.
Yeah, so in a sense that, yes, it's I think, and that's the difference, because for me, so for dog people, they see their own dog, they have some imagination, and they have to prove this concept, and if they are not able to do it, then they get frustrated. I remember one member of the department. He believes that he can recognize his dog's barking, and then we show that actually individual humans can't discriminate their own dog's barking. They do it only because the other dogs bark so differently. But if you control for the gender, for the breed, it's impossible. And I remember he coming back and doing the test all the time, over and over. And he always failed.
I can do this.
Yes. So I think for me it was always like an exploration, like going to Antarctica to find out what's there. I know expectations, you know, what the dog mind it is. But now I have some understanding of it, and I think that's the great thing, that at least I now have sort of a imagination what a dog performance, or what a dog can achieve or not achieve, and what situations they can understand, relate, although we still have some new questions. So, for example, the memory issue, but was that something that, okay, how long can a dog remember? Now we know that dogs can remember forever, sort of, in specific situation, but there was no data. So we really now had a method to show. And I remember with Claudia, where we did this Do As I Do test, we were anxious, okay, maybe the dog could remember 2 minutes for the demonstrated action, and then said, well, let's try 10 minutes, and then said, well, let's try 12 hours, and now we know that dogs can remember 24 hours, actually. So it was such an interesting finding that, the dog can remember on a specific event for one day, which for us was, obviously, you had hoped for that, but you never know. I mean, maybe just forget as we forget.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Adam.
you,
We look
Adam.
forward to continuing this conversation with some of the other presenters this afternoon in our panel session and delving a little bit deeper into these themes of evolution and selection in dogs and how it relates back to our interactions with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.